Hey, good morning, everybody. This is the first episode of Light in a Spoon's Spoonful of Light. I'm going to spend time, hopefully each week, as we unroll this and unfold and expand Light in a Spoon. But there are things that show up in my heart that we've decided that we're going to have as a separate type of podcast. I'm even trying to video this as well as record the audio version of it, and we'll see how that goes. So I've got my iPhone to my left, and I've got my Nikon set up in video mode, but I had to sit down and record this even though the makeup people and the hair folks didn't show up to get it ready to go or me ready to go. As it happens, and I did this intentionally, I wanted to record the first episode of this while I was sitting damn close to the beach down in Todos Santos, the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico, because it speaks a lot to what Light in a Spoon is becoming for me. It is, I'm becoming conscious of the fact that there is so much life to live, so much to express, so many opportunities to go deep and find out who we are, and then experience the world and the beauty that surrounds us. But what I want to talk about today, well, that leads to what I want to talk about today, because I don't know about you, but in my life I've met so many people that are in the experience of being undone and stuck with what was delivered to them, what they were handed as kids. And in their young formative years, their entire life becomes the story and the connection to what happened to them. And damn, they are sorry people to be around. Now, I can say that out loud because similar to being raised in a redneck town in a redneck family, no, we weren't rednecks. We were incredibly conservative, and the boot of the master was pretty heavy on all of our necks. But that being the case, I did grow up for most of my life having that sense of I'm kind of screwed. Like I had been delivered something as a kid, as a young man, that wore me out, wore me down, to the point of depression and sadness that led into becoming an angry son of a bitch. And then that ultimately led into me picking up alcohol as a way to soothe that pain, which then became its own descent into Dante's Inferno, man. It got dark. It was heavy. But I sit here today, a pretty relatively fucking happy dude, free. And it's been as a result of realizing that what I was handed, like the cards I got dealt and laid on the table of my life in front of me to play, aren't necessarily what ends up having to be the way life turns out. And sitting here on the lanai of this beautiful casita of Flora del Mar, and that's a story in itself, how I even ended up here. But that'll be for another episode, maybe, as life unfolds And who the hell knows, I may end up back here. But the talk that I wanted to, what I wanted to present this morning is that we all get dealt cards. We all get wheelbarrows of shit that gets dumped on our feet. And life, often for most of us, isn't really pretty. And it becomes pretty desperate. And at least it seems that way. But what I want to talk about today is the fact that, not the fact, man, that is a cold word. But there seems to be magic and mystery in why we are dealt things that we are. And for me, like I had mentioned earlier, I was raised in a home that it was oppressive. It was pretty narrow. It was dark. And as a free-spirited, artistic, creative musician and an athlete, that wasn't really appreciated, nor was it nurtured when I was young. And as a result, I swallowed everything. I tried to become a goddamn good believer. I mean, I tried with all of my heart to be a freaking, believer. I embraced it. I did what I could to be what I was taught was the way to be. But man, that began to cultivate within me a deep-seated resentment. And, this shit just doesn't work. Now what? So what I have learned along the way, and what I am so grateful for today, is the fact that it didn't matter what I was dealt. It doesn't matter what you were dealt. And I'm serious. It doesn't matter what you were dealt. It doesn't matter what kind of shit was brought in a wheelbarrow and dumped on your feet, or even over your head. Because that stuff, we get to choose what it becomes for us. We get to choose what that shit on our shoes becomes. And it either becomes our undoing. Seriously, I mean, I for years, for most of my life, it was my undoing. I was so wrapped up in the story of why I would never transcend the anger and the desperation and the darkness of who I had become and what I had found life to be. I didn't think there was any fucking way out. I just was pretty hopeless. However, that undoing and coming to the end of the undoing, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about hitting a bottom. Well, someone asked me this morning if I have really hit a bottom. I said, well, hell, I've bounced along the bottom for a long time. But something awakened, something happened. And as is often the case, there is something that happens, even if it is happening over a period of a lot of years. Something begins to happen that brings us to the end of what has been our suffering, if we choose it. So that wheelbarrow full of desperate stuff and heavy stuff and dark stuff that we get delivered, that gets set at our feet and woven into the fabric of our souls, often and way too often becomes our undoing. And we become undone, and many of us never, ever find our way back or into something beyond the undoing. And life becomes the pile of shit. Or there's something else that is a possibility, and that very stuff, all the recipe, the stuff that got woven into the fabric of who we've become and who we became can also become our redemption. It gets to be what has us experience freedom and deliverance and power and love. Oh my God, love. Oh my God, love. And I'm not talking about the love of another. Although, goddamn, that would be nice. Honestly, it would really, really be nice. It would be a wonderful experience. But it's the love that begins to find its way into our souls, into our hearts through what had been the dark night of most of our souls. There's a light that begins to dawn. There's a still small voice that we begin to hear that invites us in what I've read and what I've heard and termed as, it invites us into the unforced rhythms of grace. It invites us into the unforced rhythms of this beautiful experience of life on this incredible planet. Yeah. I know what you're thinking. And I know what you're feeling. This incredible planet, look at the shit we're dealing with right now on the planet. But the beautiful thing about what we're experiencing on the planet is that we have the opportunity and the ability, and we've got the capacity to undo all of that stuff. But when you just are in the experience of what is our mother, this beautiful earth, it is only abundance. It's light. It fills us to the core of our beings with hope, with power, with the ability to love one another like we've never loved one another. And then when people are loving us, it allows us to be vulnerable enough to open our hearts and say, thank you. Thank you. I don't know how this is going to land, but I'm going to end it there because I've got so much to share. So much to share. I've been moved to the core of my being over the past probably 2 years that I am in the experience of living as an untethered soul, living with a sense of power and freedom, of being loved. And that love is springing up from within. And then when I look around and I experience Mother, I experience the love coming from the ground. And I experience the love from you. I am touched, moved, and inspired to move more deeply into like who I was meant to be. Because the boot of the master is off this dude's neck. It has been for just a little bit. And just for a minute, as far as my life is concerned, it seems like a freaking minute. But that minute seems like an eternity, and the joy. And I'm not saying that I don't have days where I wake up in a funk and I've got to deal with a past that seems heavy, but it only seems heavy because in the moment, it's just freedom. And with that, Let's all find a way to pour our light into the spoon of our brothers and sisters and make life one hell of a grand adventure.